Hello gamers, this is Sai and welcome back to Which Way Games. Now what vile creature can be seen lurking inside the vents? And with that being said, let's get on with the video. When it comes to the worlds of horror and the supernatural, most would associate these with a paranormal being living inside a gothic castle, or superhuman killers on the hunt to fulfill a need for bloodlust. Of course, there are other creatures of the night that through the ages have tormented mankind for millennia. Now all this talk about space and the threat from beyond the stars does make me wonder what else I'll find in this mansion as I explore. Of course, coming back to the dark void of space, I'm certain that strange and mysterious life forms yet to be discovered. Some of these resemble the stuff of nightmares, others can be benevolent, whereas most look upon the earth with envious eyes. Of course, no one truly knows what lurks in the darkness of space, but through the twisted imaginations of humanity, some have been inspired by an evil threat from the stars. Obviously, combining the worlds of horror and the supernatural with the realm of sci-fi opens up endless possibilities for the subgenre of terror. The idea of an alien menace from another galaxy coming to Earth and causing destruction in its wake has been the inspiration for many forms of entertainment, such as Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, Ridley Scott's Alien franchise, and the Combine from the Half-Life series. All of these have gone down in history as providing a great but memorable experience, but when it comes to the world of gaming, the imagination can run wild, even tricking the mind. Of course, there are a set of games that took the concept of sci-fi horror survival to a whole new level, and this is known as the Dead Space series. And combining this with the supernatural only added to the terror for gamers. So with that in mind, let's go back to where it all started. All the way back in the late 90s and the early 2000s, gamers have been treated some fantastic horror gaming series, such as Resident Evil and Silent Hill. Each of these had their own legion of fans, but gamers were looking for the next thing to make them run from their gaming systems in terror. But when Resident Evil 4 was released, it changed the playing field for survival horror games. Video game director Glenn Schofield was on a mission to create the most frightening horror game ever made, and he broke a few rules here and there, as well as created some of his own that even now are still followed. Clearly being inspired by the fantastic Resident Evil 4 as well as Silent Hill, Glenn was undertaking a task so big that most game developers could only dream of achieving this goal, especially in the survival horror genre. Resident Evil 4 is still regarded as one of the best survival horror games ever made, looking at the wider spectrum of fear and suspense. So Glenn knew he had to make a game that could go shoulder to shoulder with this legendary game. When Dead Space was in its development stages, Glenn used the development kit of the original Xbox and put together a working demo that showcased exactly how he and his team wanted Dead Space to look. There were 3 rooms filled to the brim with graphical achievements not seen before, as well as an overall look very reminiscent to the sci-fi horror film known as Event Horizon. A great film that brings a whole new meaning to sci-fi horror, but I don't want to ruin it for future viewers. Not wanting Dead Space to be a carbon copy of the Resident Evil and Silent Hill series, the idea was to have the game set in the future, deep in space, where humanity was recovering from the brink of extinction. And gamers got to play as Isaac Clarke, the silent protagonist that was a link between gamers and the game. This of course has been done before with the Legend of Zelda series. Can you imagine a Zelda game being set in the future? Actually, come to think of it, there is a theory that says Doomguy is a future version of Link many years in the future. One key factor throughout development was the sound design, as ambient music as well as unique sounds would add to the overall experience of terror gamers would find themselves having. Now there just happens to be one part of the game that will strike terror into the hearts of gamers, but of course I'm not ruining it for anybody. Gamers loved the feeling of isolation, as well as the terror felt when coming face to face with the necro-morphs, who came in many different shapes and sizes, but unlike other horror games, a bullet to the head wasn't enough. Now this is where Dead Space is quite clever. When gamers come face to face with a necro-morph, they'll attempt to run away. And of course, running around the corner, they'll come face to face with yet another necro-morph which will rip Isaac limb from limb. Some gamers panicked when they first encountered the necro-morphs and not knowing how to stop them, but luckily, dismemberment is a surefire way to keep the enemies down. Another great thing about Dead Space is the removal of an on-screen HUD, as well as all cutscenes, allowing gamers to experience things in real time.
Jesus! Open fire! Open fire! Trigger power!
When Dead Space was released, it proved to be such a hit with gamers and critics that several awards were won by Glenna's talented development team. And of course, other forms of entertainment welcomed Dead Space with open arms, such as comics, as well as a cartoon that explained some of the events that happened prior to the first game. Did someone say cartoon? Where's Sai? My senses are telling me that the cartoon guy has just discovered that I'm not in the game room. Shh, don't tell him. With Dead Space proving to be such a hit with gamers who loved its great gameplay and terrifying atmosphere, it wasn't long until a sequel was released known as Dead Space 2. In the sequel, gamers once again were controlling Isaac, but 3 years after the events of the first game, where he finds himself on another space station, being terrorised by the necro-morphs but unable to recall past events. Everything had been approved upon with gamers and critics, stating that it was a perfect follow-up to Dead Space, although the multiplayer was hit hard due to some uninspired level design. Despite this, Dead Space 2 was still a success, and from this, the series became a trilogy. Gamers were overjoyed when Dead Space 2 proved to be such a huge success. So when Dead Space 3 finally landed in their gaming systems, gamers pressed start with great anticipation. Once again, gamers were playing as Isaac, who was clearly traumatized by the dark power of the marker, giving him visions and messing with the very fabric of reality around himself. Dead Space 3 removed the multiplayer deathmatches from the previous game, in favour of a drop-in drop-out style of cooperative gameplay, very much like the LEGO game series. Gamers and critics were impressed with the third instalment to the Dead Space series, with only a few minor issues here and there. Some say that Dead Space 3 was a bit of a letdown, but when played after the first two games, it's a perfect follow-up to this fantastic trilogy. There would be other games set within the Dead Space universe, however these couldn't quite recapture the magic of the first three games. For example, Dead Space Extraction for the Nintendo Wii, which otherwise is a good game, but felt out of place, especially with its on-rail shooting based gameplay. Although fun, the Nintendo Wii had other mature games, especially Resident Evil 4. Beaming from the success of the original trilogy, there would be many downloadable contents released that expanded the main story, as well as introduced a whole new terror for Isaac to encounter. And with talks of a fourth instalment, Dead Space 4 is rumoured to make an appearance soon. Maybe gamers will find themselves travelling among the stars, searching for the original marker, or perhaps going back through time to the events of the first game. Overall, the Dead Space series of games are fun but yet terrifying to play, creating a sense of isolation while gamers look for a way to survive against an ancient alien evil. Exploring the empty hallways of a space station while listening out for an entity of pure violence only adds to the experience of this great gaming series. And when gamers came face to face with a supernatural force, the fear of panic soon rears its ugly head, ready to shock gamers to their core. Hopefully the fourth instalment of the series will appear soon, and gamers will finally get to see exactly how far Isaac tiptoes the precipice of madness. Maybe in time, the first three games will get a remaster, improving on any flaws that these games have, as well as introducing a whole new method of shock value when playing. Anyway, come back next time where the power of voodoo is used to cross over to Deadside, but can one man stop the end of days? Thank you so much for watching, and see you next game.
You